Aloha and good morning, everyone. It is Thursday, February 5th, 2026, and the time is now 9:01 a.m. Will the Committee on Zoning and Planning meeting please come to order? I would like to welcome committee members, Councilmember Cordero, Councilmember Okimoto, Councilmember Tupola. Vice Chair Waters will be coming in shortly. Also joining us today will be Councilmember Weyer. Although remote verbal testimony is being permitted, this is a regular in-person meeting and not a remote meeting by interactive conference technology under HRS Section 92-3.7. Therefore, the meeting will continue notwithstanding loss of audiovisual communication with remote testifiers or loss of the public broadcast of the meeting. Members of the public will be allowed to provide verbal testimony on all items on the agenda when each item is taken up in two ways, in person in the council and remotely via video conference or phone. Before testifying, each person shall state their name for the record. Each speaker may not have anyone else read their statement and will be limited to a 1-minute presentation per item. All persons who registered to testify in person will be called upon first. Persons who did not register will be given an opportunity to offer testimony after the registered testifiers. Once in-person testimony has concluded, I will proceed to the remote testifiers when I call your name or the last 3 digits of your phone number. Please follow the prompts to unmute. As both English and Hawaiian are official languages of the state of Hawaii, pursuant to Article 15, Section 4 of the Hawaii State Constitution and Section 113 of the Hawaii Revised Statutes, members of the public may testify in either language. For verbal testimonies offered in Olelo, Hawaii, additional time as may be necessary will be allowed for the testifier to provide an English translation of their testimony. Written testimonies, including the testifier's address, email address, and phone number, will be available to the public as described on the posted agenda. As a courtesy, please turn off or silence all cell phones for the duration of this meeting. Thank you. For your information, item number 6, Resolution 26-6 on page 10, and item number 7, Bill 70, 2025, CD1 on page 11 of the agenda have been canceled and will not be considered. I did want to make a comment on agenda item number 6. And I wanted to express my disappointment with the developer for asking me to take this measure off the agenda after I had worked on a CD1 that I felt not only addressed their concerns, but was fully supported by the city administration as well as corporation council. At the end of the day, I think we all want to get the necessary housing built for our kupuna, whatever age they are. But I did want to say that if anyone has a matter before this committee, I would prefer that you have the courtesy, if you wanted to work on a substantive matter relating to an issue that you have, that you come at the outset and not the day before to try to resolve any outstanding issues. Moving to agenda item number 1. For action, Resolution 26-13. This resolution confirms the mayor's reappointment of Ryan Kamo to serve on the Planning Commission to the City and County of Honolulu for a term to expire on June 30th, 2030. Mr. Kamo is an architect at Design Partners Incorporated and will continue to provide representation on the Commission under the Land Use Planning, Policies, and Principles category. We have posted on the agenda a CD1 version of the resolution, which I submitted for your information. A summary of the amendments is listed on the agenda. The CD1 makes technical amendments, including adding that the Planning Commission members are appointed by the mayor and appointed by the City Council to staggered 5-year terms, referencing the mayor's message number, and clarifying that Mr. Kamo is being reappointed as a member of the commission. I would like to call up the appointee to say a few words. Could you please introduce yourself and share a little about your current and envisioned future role on the Planning Commission? And welcome, Vice Chair Waters.
Aloha, good morning. Thank you, Chair Kiaʻāina and members of the Zoning and Planning Committee. Thank you to the committee for your consideration and to the mayor and to the mayor's office for their continued support through this process. I'm humbled and honored to be considered for reappointment to the Planning Commission and definitely take this role seriously. Through my practice of architecture, I've been fortunate to see the impacts that nuances of land use legislation as well as decisions made in this chamber have on the impacts of our communities today and for our future communities. and I'd be honored to share my experiences as well as my perspectives with the Planning Commission. It's been an honor to serve thus far and look forward to continued collaboration with City Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kamo, and thank you for your consideration for this reappointment. Members, are there any questions for Mr. Kamo? Seeing none. Mr. Kamo, on question 6 of your nominee form, you responded that your employer does business with the city. However, you did not indicate the nature of the business and approximate dollar amount in the last 5 years. Can you please provide us with this information? And if you do not have that information now, can you please get back to us before the next full council meeting?
Will do. The nature of the business, too, was potentially RFP work. Right now, we don't have any ongoing contracts with the city and county, but we'll get that information for you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Before I call up the administration, I would like to take public testimony. Proceeding first with in-person testimony in the chamber. Clerks, do we have any in-person testifiers for this item?
There are none.
Is there anyone else in the chamber who would like to testify? Seeing none. Proceeding with remote testimony. Clerks, do we have any remote testifiers or anybody standing by?
Chair, there are none.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Kamo.
Thank you, Chair.
For the administration, we have Don Takeuchi Apuna, Director of the Department of Planning and Permitting.
Good morning, Chair and committee members. We certainly support Mr. Kamo's reappointment and thank him for his good work. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Members, do you have any other questions or discussion before I make my recommendation? Seeing none, the chair recommends that Resolution 26-13 be amended to the posted CD1. Any discussion? Any objections or reservations? Hearing none, the resolution has been amended to a CD1. The chair then recommends that Resolution 26-13 CD1 be reported out for adoption. Any discussion? Any objections or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Moving to agenda item number 2, for action, Resolution 25-333. This resolution grants a special management area major permit to Robert Vavel to allow for the demolition of an existing single-story, single-unit dwelling and detached 2-car garage, construction of a new 2-story, single-unit dwelling, pool, spa, and detached 2-car garage with a recreation room on the 2nd floor above the garage, decommission of an existing cesspool, and installation of a new individual wastewater system on an approximately 13,230 square foot shoreline lot zoned R75 residential district located at 68309 Crozier Drive in Waialua and identified as tax map key 68005-015. We have posted on the agenda a CD1 version of the resolution, which I submitted. For your information, a summary of the amendments is listed on the agenda. The city's wastewater system does not serve the project area, and the project includes installation of a new individual wastewater system, which is regulated by the State Department of Health. Condition B of the proposed CD1 requires the applicant to submit to the Department of Planning and Permitting revised project plans showing the location of the project's new individual wastewater system, which must be outside of the portion of the project site that is within flood zone AE. Approximately 25% of the Makaimos portion of the project site will be impacted by 3.2 feet of sea level rise by the year 2100. No project structures are proposed within the sea level rise exposure area. The shoreline setback for the project site is 60 feet. The project swimming pool is the closest structure to the shoreline and is set back approximately 63 feet. There is no wall between the pool and the shoreline that can act as a shoreline hardening structure. Instead, there is a chain link fence. A portion of the project is within flood zone AE, a fringe flood area that is within the flood hazard area, and must comply with the special flood hazard requirements of ROH Chapter 21A. The dwelling will be elevated approximately 14 feet above mean sea level. Condition C2 of the proposed CD1 requires the applicant to acknowledge and take responsibility for the cleanup and restoration of the project site in the event of coastal hazard-related loss of property. The State Historic Preservation Division recommended that the applicant prepare an archaeological inventory survey with subsurface testing for the project site. Condition G of the proposed CD1 includes conditions requiring the applicant to submit to the Department of Planning and Permitting a copy of the division's written acceptance of the project's AIS and to implement all mitigation protocols approved or otherwise required by the division. The project proposals to excavate approximately 340 cubic yards of soil material, which will be used as infill across the project site, while no importation of soil or structural fill material is proposed, since construction equipment may transfer invasive pathogens, pests, or plants. The proposed CD1 includes Condition J, which requires the applicant to comply with certain protocols to minimize the spread of invasive species. Joining us remotely by video conference is Mark Howland from Well Environmental Services, LLC, who will be providing a brief presentation. For your information, the presentation is available online as miscellaneous communication 61-61-2026. Mr. Howland?
Morning, Chair. Good morning, council members. Thank you for being in attendance on this matter. This is Resolution 25333 for the Zoning and Planning Committee. It's concerned of 68309 Crozier Drive, Waialua. I'll share my presentation.
Yes, if you could please share your PowerPoint, please.
Is it sharing?
We see it.
Can you see it?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you.
Can you make it, expand it to the screen?
Yeah, I'm trying to. There you go. All right, this is, as we mentioned, Resolution 25333, Crozier Drive in Waialua. This is the locus of the property, summary of the environmental documentation for an SMA major application in front of your committee. The proposed action is construction on a partial demolition of an existing single-family home, garage, new single-family dwelling, and garage in Waialua under an SMA major land use application, cost greater than $500,000, thus a major. It's 13,230 square feet, approximately 0.3037 acres. There's no erosion area, as the certified shoreline is off-site. Coordination with interested parties was required. It was distributed to the agencies listening to consultation. The architect is also here today in case there's technical questions. This is the dwelling floor areas and interior areas, garage areas, owner information, TMK numbers, building area, and parking calculations. This is the plot plan of the property. It's basically the midpoint of Crozier Drive. This is an existing single-family dwelling on the property and a grass yard. These are site photos taken from various portions on the property to show different sides of the existing building. Vegetation, the shoreline is basically palm trees. As I've last noted, had not been affected by the rhino beetles. This is the overall concept plan for the property, as drawn by KC Designs. This is a soil map for the property. As you can see, it's a lot of fill land and jacket sands on the property. And actually, given the past construction, there's a lot more fill in the jacket sands than indicates by the NRCS soil maps. This is, the work area is not impacted by the 3.2 sea level rise, but the non-work area to the shoreline is. Enhanced, regardless, enhanced foundations are planned. It's a small erosion loss indicator. It's a shoreline lot. It's basically 0.03 feet per year. So it actually bumps the shoreline survey setback out about 1.5 feet, 0.2. The erosion rate accretion is large. So that beach is actually growing, one of the few in the Wahoo that's not shrinking. The category 4, it's basically along the shoreline. The hurricane site was not working well the day we took those pictures. All of the sites either in AE or XS flood zone. Most of the work area is in the AE. The frontage along Weyer Beach Road is the X. Again, we always appreciate the different types of conditions the City Council Zoning and Planning Committee gives to us along with other parties to make sure that these provisions are clear to the applicant and that he will follow them. So if you have any questions, we'll gladly answer them. And also Kai Huku from KC Designs is here as well for any architectural technical questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holland. Members, are there any questions for Mr. Holland? Before I call up the administration, I would like to take public testimony. Oh, Councilmember Weyer.
Thank you, Chair Mahalo, Mr. Holland. Just wanted to confirm to make sure all the issues were addressed. I know October 2023, there was an offer to present to neighborhood board, and then subsequent to that, there was a November 2025 public hearing. Were there any public comments or concerns that were raised to yourself or to DPP as far as you know?
Not that I know of.
Okay, mahalo. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Before I call up the administration, I would like to take public testimony, proceeding first with in-person testimony in the chamber. Clerks, do we have any in-person testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Is there anyone else in the chamber who would like to testify? Seeing none, is there any remote testimony?
Chair, there are none.
For the administration, we have Don Takeuchi Apuna for the Department of Planning and Permitting.
Thank you, Chair. We're supportive of the proposed CD1 and are available for any questions. Thank you.
Members, are there any questions or discussion before I make my recommendation? The chair recommends that Resolution 25-333 be amended to the posted CD1. Any discussion, any objections or reservations? Hearing none, the resolution has been amended to a CD1. The chair then recommends that Resolution 25-333 CD1 be reported out for adoption. Any discussion, any objections or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Members, before we move on to agenda item number 3, I wanted to welcome 4th, 5th, and 6th grade student leaders from the Maunawili Elementary School Student Council. If you could please rise as your name is called. Cameron Nesty, Maya Kiyohiro, Grayson Belting, Ezekiel Kunioka, Eleanor Lynch, Lilnoy Vandersant, Ella Martin, Zarina Taylor, Reinder Reese, Brenton Bertram, Brianna Granemeyer, and Jana Kanoa. Welcome to the council chambers, and looking forward to you learning more about the process, and we greatly appreciate you serving your community. Moving to agenda item number 3, for action resolution 26-4. This resolution grants a special management area major permit to the Department of Environmental Services to allow for the expansion and rehabilitation of the existing Westlock wastewater pump station, including the construction of a new generator room attached to the pump station building by a breezeway, relocation of various equipment and systems to the new generator room, removal and replacement of an above-ground diesel fuel storage tank, relocation of the north and east concrete rubble masonry perimeter walls, replacement of submersible pumps, pump bypass system, force main piping and valves, ventilation systems, restroom facilities, windows, doors, and gates, installation of a new air relief valve, expansion and rehabilitation of the wet well, construction of a new trash enclosure, and restriping of the surface parking area on an approximately 2,300 square foot portion of an 80.269 acre zoning lot that is split zone Ag 1 Restricted Agricultural District and P2 General Preservation District. Located at 911024 Kapapapuhi Street in Honolulu and identified as a portion of tax map key 91181001. We have posted on the agenda a CD1 version of the resolution which I submitted. For your information, a summary of the amendments is listed on the agenda. The 2,300 square foot project site is located on a portion of the West Lock Golf Course parcel. The golf course and the pump station were developed by the city in the late 1980s as part of the West Lock Estate subdivision. The pump station has a capacity of 1,050 million gallons per day and pumps wastewater from the West Lock subdivision through a forced main along the Pearl Harbor shoreline to a manhole in the Waipahu industrial area. The wastewater then flows via gravity line to the Kunia wastewater pump station and to the Honolulu wastewater treatment plant. The large 80-acre zoning lot is not a shoreline lot, but is technically considered a shoreline lot because portions of the lot are within the 60-foot shoreline setback area. However, the project site is more than 400 feet from the shoreline and is not expected to be impacted by 3.2 feet of sea level rise by the year 2100. An environmental assessment was completed for the project, and the Department of Environmental Services issued a finding of no significant impact on May 28, 2025. The assessment included a literature review and field inspection conducted on October 2nd, 2024 by Kiaʻāina Archaeological Consulting, LLC. There are many archaeological studies prepared in response to recent development in the area. Pre-contact sites near the project site includes fishing shrines and fish ponds, iwi kupuna or Native Hawaiian ancestral remains, habitation areas, and agricultural sites. Post-contact sites are associated with the historic sugar plantation era and include foundations of former plantation structures, historic burials, irrigation features, wells, and remnants of the Oahu Railway and Land Company Railroad. There were nearly 100 Land Commission awards for Lo'ikalo. Based on the cultural sensitivity of the area, Kiaʻāina recommended the preparation of an archaeological monitoring plan. In November 2025, Kiaʻāina prepared a cultural impact assessment and kapa'akai analysis for the project site. While the assessment analysis did not identify cultural resources or ongoing traditional cultural practices on the site, fishing and crabbing, as well as fish pond and wetland habitat restoration, are ongoing practices nearby. Like the review and inspection, the assessment of recommended archaeological monitoring, Condition B of the proposed CD1 includes conditions requiring the applicant to submit to the Department of Planning and Permitting a copy of the State Historic Preservation Division's written acceptance of the project's archaeological monitoring plan and to implement all mitigation protocols approved or otherwise required by the division. The project proposes to excavate approximately 65 cubic yards of soil material, which will be removed and disposed of off-site. While no importation of soil or structural fill material is proposed, since construction equipment may transfer invasive pathogens, pests or plants, the proposed CD1s includes Condition D, which requires the applicant to comply with certain protocols to minimize the spread of invasive species. Since the project is a public use and structure and the Department of Environmental Services is the applicant, the resolution does not include a deadline to obtain a project building permit. Joining us in the chamber is Colette Sakota from Environmental Planning Solutions, LLC, who will be providing a brief presentation. For your information, the presentation is available online as Department Communication 62-2026.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Kiaʻāina, members of the Zoning and Planning Committee. My name is Colette Sakota. I'm representing the sponsor of the project, Department of Environmental Services. It's for Resolution 26-4, West Lock Estates Wastewater Pump Station Upgrade, Special Management Area Permit. The project site is located in the existing parking lot of the West Lock Community Shoreline Park at the end of Kapapapuhi Street in Ewa Beach. The project site was designated in the West Lock Estates Master Plan more than 35 years ago. located at the Mauka edge of the special management area on land owned by the city and county of Honolulu. It's about 450 feet Mauka of the Pearl Harbor West Lock shoreline. This upgrade project has completed its 343 HRS environmental assessment, as well as presented to the Eva Neighborhood Board, and this was done with prior notification of the adjacent neighbors. The wastewater pump station was built in 1989 to service the West Lock Estates community. The facility is in good condition, but aging. The 2023 engineering, environmental, and code issues were pointed out in this pump station. The CRM wall created ADA compliance clearance issues and restricts access to the generator room and removal of the generator. The existing above-ground storage tank is not properly sized and does not have any spill containment. The pump station building is no longer in compliance with the latest national fire protection codes with the wet well within the building footprint, and there are aging pumps, valves, and piping. This is a current site plan prepared to reflect in red the new expanded facilities against the existing. The engineering architectural design solutions for these key safety, access, and environmental issues are to install an above-ground, double-walled fuel storage tank that ensures physical spill containment, create an open breezeway within existing pump station building by removing portions of the north and south walls of the building and adding security fencing, to relocate the emergency generator and day tank into a newly constructed generator room attached to the existing building, and to relocate the existing electrical motor control center and supervisory control and data acquisition system into the existing generator room to provide a separate electrical room away from the wet well. Overall, the existing site of 2,300 square feet will be enlarged by relocating the north and east CRM walls outward, which would be northward, and will add about 1,700 square feet. These improvements, including providing a dedicated parking area for maintenance vehicles, as well as protecting the public from wastewater maintenance and operations, would be also not impeding on the public parking area. These are elevation drawings that pretty much reflect the new facilities, the new buildings that would be within the same height limit of the existing. These are the east and west elevations. Other major proposed improvements include replacing existing pumps, valves, and piping within the pump station, replace the restroom facilities, electrical and water system improvements, constructing a new attached generator room for a new diesel fuel generator and day tank, ventilation system for restroom, new generator room, and an electrical room, repairing and replacing the entrance gates, replacing windows and doors, parking lot of the site improvements, including constructing a new trash enclosure and added security and lighting. The design and environmental evaluations included preparation of engineering and architectural drawings, and the Chapter 343 environmental assessment studies included the hazardous materials assessment, an existing trees report, archaeological literature review and a field inspection report, and a cultural impact assessment, as well as a geotechnical analysis and recommendations. As I mentioned earlier, the EVA Neighborhood Board presentation, and prior to that, sending notifications ahead of time to the neighboring properties. The Neighborhood Board meeting presentation was held April 10th of last year. The final EA in Fonzie was issued in June of last year. This site is located in flood zone X, which is an area determined to be outside of the floodplain, according to FEMA and FIRM. Soils consist of Honolulu clay and Helemano silty clay. The vegetation condition of the existing 3 trees near the project site, an African tulip tree will be removed. The other 2, one monkey pod and another African tulip tree, will be protected during construction. Other existing surrounding vegetation will not be impacted by the project. And as mentioned earlier, excavation will be of approximately 65 cubic yards of soil and 12 cubic yards of fill. This site is away from the shoreline, and no certified shoreline survey is required since it is outside of the shoreline setback area.
Ms. Sakota, if you don't mind, we all have a copy of this.
Okay.
If you could please summarize.
Okay, just to update you on the archaeological and cultural resources plans. On January 8th of this year, SHPD issued its official approval of the report. So we'll be submitting that to DPP and for the record. And we will be preparing the archaeological monitoring plan. And this would be submitted for SHPD review during the same time as building permit process. Thank you very much for your patience, and we welcome any questions.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Members, are there any questions for Ms. Sakota? Councilmember Tupola.
Hi, aloha, thank you for being here. Briefly, when you presented to the neighborhood, just because not necessarily at that site, but down farther at Kapapapuhi, there's other issues. Were there any issues brought up or any concerns?
No concerns
Okay,
brought up.
perfect. Thank you, Chair.
Any other questions? Seeing none, before I call up the administration, I would like to take public testimony, proceeding first with in-person testimony in the council chamber. Clerks, do we have any in-person testifiers for this item?
Chair, there are none.
Is there anyone else in the chamber who would like to testify? Seeing none, proceeding with remote testimony. Clerks, do we have any remote testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
For the administration, we have the Director of the Department of Planning and Permitting, Don Takeuchi Apuna.
Thank you, Chair. We are in support of the proposed CD1. Thank you.
Members, do you have any questions or discussion before I make my recommendation? The chair recommends that Resolution 26-4 be amended to the posted CD1. Any discussion, any objections or reservations? Hearing none, the resolution has been amended to a CD1. The chair then recommends that Resolution 26-4 CD1 be reported out for adoption. Any discussion, any objections or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Moving forward, we will be taking up agenda items number 4 and 5 together. Members of the public may testify on either or both agenda items. For action, item number 4, Resolution 25-228, and item number 5, Resolution 26-17. These resolutions direct the Director of Planning and Permitting and the Planning Commission to process an amendment to the Land Use Commission to modify provisions relating to conditional use permits. Conditional use permits, which I will be referring to as CUPs, are discretionary permits that allow for certain uses in certain zoning districts if specified criteria are satisfied. CUPs are processed and approved by the department and are not reviewed by the council. Since CUPs are discretionary permits, conditions of approval may be included in a permit to mitigate impacts of the use. We have posted on the agenda a CD1 version of Resolution 25-228 submitted by Councilmember Weyer, who also introduced the resolution. For your information, a summary of the amendments is listed on the agenda. I will now call on Councilmember Weyer for an explanation.
Mahalo, Chair. I mean, just to put it concisely, you know, this came about through a package of measures we introduced just to respond to the continued land use ordinance violations. I think the recent Kamana Nui Gondola project in Mount Ka'ala was informative about how we can hone in on what the underlying issue was. For that particular project, the community was concerned. It was clear that, of course, the gondola is inappropriate there. There's insufficient public input, and you know there wasn't all the information needed to make the decision. Like we saw U.S. Army Garrison Hawaii, for example, coming out to oppose the project, of course, not legally determinative, and also OHA, DLNR, a lot of information that wasn't there. And so as we talked about in the community meeting last week with North Shore Chamber and other folks, honing in on the underlying issue, understanding that we all support, you know, folks that want to uplift the community, particularly the generational landholders that have a commitment to the community, but want to do activities to continue their farming and ranching activities, but also provide economic activities. We saw this as a mechanism to avoid division in the community and to remedy the underlying issues, right? So the measure would essentially start with the public notice process, which would ensure that all the agencies, departments, and of course community, knowing the North Shore Neighborhood Board in a rural community has broad reach in terms of being able to get information out, would allow stakeholders to provide accurate information to DPP to help inform their decision. And then of course, giving DPP director the discretion to hold a public hearing if sufficient information was put forward, would again, I think, allow us to ensure that we don't land in the same issue we did with Mount Ka'ala. We're heading off the problem so everyone's on the same page at the forefront, both the community and the developer, who ideally would, you know, come in and receive input from the community, but of course not harming or adding, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars in additional cost to those generational landholders, family farmers and ranchers that are wanting to both do what they love, but then also provide economic benefit to the community. So mahalo, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Weyer. As it relates to Resolution 26-17, Council Chair Waters and I introduced this measure, and we have distributed a hand-carried CD1 version, OCS 2026-0085. The Exhibit A bill attached to the original resolution provides for the expiration of an approved CUP if no action to proceed with the approved conditional use is taken within 36 months after the permit is approved, with a possible extension of this deadline by up to 12 months if approved by the director. The CD1 deletes the CUP expiration provisions. The department has indicated that a 36-month expiration date may result in the department constantly issuing extensions of the deadline, and they prefer that the director have the discretion based on what the CUP involves to set an appropriate expiration date as a condition of approval in the CUP. The Exhibit A bill attached to the CD1 first expressly provides for circumstances under which a director may reconsider a previously approved CUP, such as when the application contains false information, the applicant fails to comply with conditions of approval, new information that was not available when the CUP was approved is presented, circumstances existing at the time the CUP was approved significantly change with the passage of time, or when the conditional use becomes detrimental to public health, safety, or welfare. The process for the department's reconsideration of a previously issued CUP is set forth in the department's administrative rules. Second, The measure requires a major CUP instead of the currently required minor CUP for the agritourism use. Agritourism may have adverse environmental and other impacts on surrounding agricultural uses and neighboring property owners, and a major CUP may be more appropriate to address these impacts. Generally, other than for a few exceptions, a minor CUP does not require an applicant to present the project to the applicable neighborhood board and does not require the director to ask adjoining property owners whether they wish to have a public hearing on the proposed project. In contrast, a major CUP requires presentation of the project to the applicable neighborhood board before submittal of the application, requires the applicant to post a notice of pending permit sign on the property, requires the applicant to make a good faith effort to notify all owners of property within 300 feet of the property regarding the proposed use, and requires the director to hold a public hearing on the proposed use. Chair Waters, as the co-introducer of this resolution, we'd like to comment further. Thank you. Resolution 25-228 would include the agritourism use as one of the exceptions for which a minor CUP would require presentation to the neighborhood board and provide the director with the discretion to hold a public hearing on the proposed use. Since Resolution 2617 would require a major CUP for agritourism, in addition to addressing these issues, it would also address the other issues we discussed, so I will be recommending that we postpone action on Resolution 25-228 and proceed on this matter under the hand-carried CD1 version of Resolution 26-17. Before I call up the administration, I would like to take public testimony. Proceeding first with in-person testimony in the council chamber. Clerks, do you have any in-person testifiers for this item?
Chair, there are none.
Is there anyone in the council chamber who would like to testify? Seeing none. Proceeding with remote testimony. Clerks, do we have any remote testifiers for this item?
Yes, Chair, we have one person, Raquel Achu.
Good morning, Raquel. You are able to testify on both items, please, since they're both considered at the same time.
Thank you very much. Raquel Achu, Wailo Moku. I submitted written testimony, also will stand by those as well. Just quick notes, I'm very, very appreciative for both of these resolutions. It's not unknown that we have struggled with CUP approvals. Specifically in my area, it's a very abused approval process for them. But more so, I think if we're able to tighten the gaps, it would help, I hope, and support DPP in their efforts to enforce. I think an expiration is absolutely needed. I understand that there may be concern about doing extensions. We could just not give an extension, because if they're taking too long, there's something wrong. But also because we end up with approvals that are too old and don't address the current environment and the current area of where these things want to take place. Having good faith by developers, I mean, in a perfect world, yeah, that's a great concept, but it doesn't happen. Community presentations, we've learned, have been critical because we want to ensure that the community doesn't find out about these things until after the fact, such as Kamana Nui. And with the agritourism component, you know, we've lost a vast amount of lands to developers buying our ag lands, chopping them up, selling them off, and turning them into fake farms, where we now have a very, what I call an imposter industry, where the farmers and so-called ranchers in that area want to be in agriculture, but they're not. And they are trying to use these types of minors and majors to get by, and it really impacts the actual genuine farmer or rancher. So I, again, have written testimony submitted. So any questions, I'm happy to answer. We'd really like to get a grip on being able to support our industry better. Mahalo.
Thank you so much. Members, any questions? Councilmember Weyer.
Thank you, Chair, and mahalo, Ms. Achu, for your testimony. And I know you referenced in your testimony, you know, if we're going the major route, then maybe there should be criteria that gets at protecting, I guess, at least certain folks in the community that, you know, are meeting the expectation of the community. and distinguishing maybe between the length and depth of a process, which can be costly, between certain types of projects versus other types of projects. And so I'm just curious, like, if you could expand on that criteria, because it, I think, really piques my interest in terms of what I brought up earlier about wanting to protect generational landholders in particular that are doing what they love. And, you know, obviously, if we're increasing costs on them, they won't be able to do it. But, you know, out-of-state investors can come in and easily pay $200,000 to do the major. So I don't know if you have insight on criteria that could be incorporated to really distinguish and get at who are wanting to target.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that question. I've really thought about this as I've taken some time to volunteer at some farms within our community. And we do have several farmers and ranchers that are genuine and real to their properties and to their operation. But then we have the ones that are not. So the agritourism component requiring a minor or a major, it's a really, I really believe there's a fine line between the two and has to be distinct. It has to be kind of a checklist, I would say. What is the best way to say? I think if we were able to develop criteria that could potentially consider maybe the volume of work or operation that they're doing. So if you have a genuine farmer that's like legit farming and they want to open to tours a couple times a week or something like that, then maybe they don't really require a major because their nexus to agriculture is there. But you also have the ones who have chosen to make that tourism activity their primary, and the agriculture is no longer the primary. So they should require a major. And that's, I think, what we were trying to get at originally in our community talking about it. But I don't want to negatively impact the established, long-time, genuine farmers that are looking at a nexus and a way to support their farm in opening it up. And I think it's doable. We do have a couple of farms on the North Shore now that open up to tours a couple times a week with a very capped group of people so that it doesn't take away from their operation. If you're looking at an agritourism plan that has a significant amount of tourism activity or activity that does not involve ag, clearly they've stepped into a realm where they don't have time for their ag operation. It's only going to be that accessory. So I think it's definitely, I look forward to the conversation to be able to make this move forward, but I think that's maybe one angle to consider, and being able to adjust to the volume of business that they want to do outside of the production.
I really appreciate that. That makes a lot of sense, just to make sure I'm hearing, because that's helpful for me. That really a distinction maybe could be noted based on impact. And that's really the concern. And so whether that's a metric that's based on visitors per day, per week, per month, whatever, or, you know, other criteria, what's the wastewater output? What is another factor that demonstrates a sizable project that warrants that much scrutiny, which oftentimes, honestly, is getting at the heart of what's causing so many concerns, because it's folks that come in from out of state with large sums of money and are doing major projects that bring about impacts and maybe deviate from ag as a primary purpose. So I hope there's an opportunity to discuss and flesh that out before passing it. But I did hear committee chair's recommendation, but I just want to ensure that the community opportunity to provide input is there. If there's any room for discussion, like, I'm happy to work on a committee draft to incorporate that, but of course I trust zoning chair to engage community to see if there's factors that should be incorporated. But thank you, Ms. Achu, and
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Members, any other questions for Ms. Achu? If not, I'm going to move on to the next testifier. Do we have Ku'ike Kamakeo Ohelo online?
Chair, testifier is not logged on.
Is there anyone else standing by to testify on this matter? If not, we're going to bring up the administration for the Department of Planning and Permitting, Don Takeuchi-Apuna.
Thank you, Chair. We do not oppose these resolutions. We're supportive. And so through the process, we can look at some of the points that were brought up. We do have concerns about, overburdening the smaller farmers. So maybe there is a way to scale it between a minor and a major. There's just different options that I think we can evaluate in order to see how this makes sense and fits the different types of agritourism proposals out there. But in any case, that's an option too, if you wanted to just push forward both resolutions, and we would look at both of them and include our concerns and provide that as part of our analysis.
Okay, that's what I was going to actually ask you. So that would be better than doing it in one, correct?
Either way, but I think we've heard the concerns, and we similarly have those concerns, so we would evaluate and we would make recommendations based on what we believe would make sense going forward.
Okay, and let me leave it to, I'm going to have a discussion with the members here. Thank you. You answered actually a question that I was going to ask you with regard to making a distinction between the two. So, Councilmember Tupola.
Thanks. Aloha, Director. Quick question. I guess for me, one of the concerns I have is about bringing things that are CUP minor up to neighborhood board status, because we wanted to differentiate that from CUP major, which is a lot of investment, money, presentations, you got to hire a consultant, because most of the time the applicant is not at that level to be able to answer those kind of questions. Whereas the other resolution is kind of suggesting the inverse, which is not that we bring things from CUP minor up to neighborhood board, but that we consider that there's a portion of agritourism that might be major as opposed to a CUP minor. Back when we were doing Bill 64, I had kind of brought this up from some of our farmers as well. So I guess in your perspective, because I know if we bring things that are CUP minor up to neighborhood board, that's everything, right? So I think we're just talking about agritourism, which is why I felt like it was safer during Bill 64 to define major agritourism versus CUP minor agritourism. So what is your thoughts about that? Because that's kind of what I see in the differentiation between the two resolutions. I would rather us explore the agritourism as a major minor as opposed to bring everything that is CUP minor up. What is your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. It's just projects are so varied, and the resources for one farmer versus another. I think that we need to kind of delineate, what is the span of possibilities, and if there's a line for minor versus major, and the burden, right, with the major versus the minor. So agree, and I think that's something that we would look at and where we would kind of draw that line.
Yeah, thank you, Director. Thank you, Chair. I'll join the discussion after we finish questions.
Okay, any other comments? Councilmember Weyer.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just quickly, Director, because I want to make sure I'm understanding. So for the major, generally, if it's a major, it goes to the neighborhood board?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, and then what are the additional steps? Maybe if you could just outline those if we're talking about cost, right, and impact.
I think it is, just generally, I think they would hire a professional to kind of provide any kind of reports or studies that would make sense for that. When we look at Kamananui, the effort is quite large compared to a minor. It might just be more the review by DPP, looking at what the concept is and if it's enough to move forward. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, and just for Chair's information, I'm not wed to my resolution, but definitely would hope and support Councilmember Tupola's comments that distinguishing between the two would be ideal. So I'm grateful DPP would be looking at that. So mahalo.
Thank you. Members, any other comments? Councilmember Tupola.
For the Director discussion.
For discussion.
Yeah, so Chair, my thought is just because I did actually submit this to you when we were talking about Bill 64, I do think there needs to be a differentiation between agritourism major and minor, but I do not agree that we need to bring everything that is CUP minor up to have a neighborhood board discussion. One, that's too many projects. Two, there are too many CUP minor things that are not agritourism related that shouldn't have that requirement.
Okay, this is going to be my question to the members. Just in light of the discussion and because I think this is a very important topic, of course, I could just postpone both and we work on something. But quite frankly, I'm a believer that we're also busy, right? I'm worried about losing momentum. So in light of the discussion, I'm actually now recommending that both measures be moved out of the committee. So this is what I'm throwing out on the table. Councilmember Cordero.
Chair, I was, for discussion, I was going to support that recommendation by yourself as well as the Director of DPP.
Councilmember Okimoto, any comments?
Thank you, Chair. No, I agree. I think I have to concur with Councilmember Tupola and her concerns about having everything go through the neighborhood board. I don't think that's the most efficient use of any time or resources. However, I defer to you as Chair.
Okay.
If you feel that both measures should move forward, I will support
I
you.
will say this, that we've had previous discussions on the minor for the neighborhood board, and I believe DPP officials were okay with that. I'm sensitive to that. Because we can't have everything going to the neighborhood board. But I think just given the impact of a lot of agritourism proposals, it really has impacted our communities. And so I was in favor of that. My objective with the other measure today was to do it at the major level, but I understand that there needs to be a distinction. So again, my recommendation will be to move both measures out to just have further discussion.
No, thank you. And I wanted to also add that being respectful to your district and Councilmember Weyer's, because especially with Councilmember Weyer's projects, this doesn't impact my district directly, but we are neighboring. So I would like the discussion to go through as we move forward.
Okay. And Councilmember Waters, do you have any comments on the discussion?
No, just that I agree with Councilmember Tupola and Okimoto. But I also agree with your recommendation because ultimately it has to go to the Planning Commission. Then it'll come back and we have another opportunity to address this.
Well, actually, after we have a discussion today, we can further decide that prior to full council, whether or not it's a different measure. What I did not want to do is just postpone it indefinitely because I think we kind of know what we want and all we need to do is finesse it. What I'm worried about is just given the fact that DPP right now is in the throes, they have 30 days, because to my understanding, the developer of the gondola project did not allow them to have 60 days to review testimonies. Is that correct, DPP Director? I know this has nothing to do with that permit, but it's just the idea that this is a very big topic right now. It's top of mind for everybody. So I would prefer to have a moving vehicle out for discussion rather than for me to indefinitely postpone this until a future date. Can you answer whether or not the developer of the gondola project said okay to 60 days, or is it still 30 days?
So I think I need to clarify what happened there. During the hearing, what we were trying to say was that, normally it would be 30 days for us to process after the hearing. But that we wanted to let the public know and the developer that based on the information, seeing what was coming in, that we might need more than 30 days. So at this point, I believe the hearing was on the 12th or the 13th of January, and we anticipate that we won't be complete with our analysis by the 13th, 12th of this month. So we will likely have to continue until we're complete with our analysis.
And do you have that discretion without the developer's approval?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thanks. So I did not know that, so that's good news. But the fact still remains that this is an important issue, and my preference would be to move both resolutions.
Thank you. If your intention is to finesse it and do that at full council, I'd prefer we do it in committee if there's going to be any amendments, rather than, as we know, full council is sometimes an 8-hour hearing. I like to dissuade chairs from doing it.
Yes, but what could also happen is that there'd be one vehicle, and then we reconcile everything in one vehicle. And so how about I just ask everybody what their preference is so that I could get your mana'o on whether or not you want me to move both or not to move either. And
Well, again, I don't mind moving both, but we could also fix it if need be when it comes back from the Planning Commission. Because I prefer not to try to fix it or finesse it at full council.
so would that be on both measures?
Yeah, Chair, I think I agree if we could fix it here. I guess what my thought is one of the things we discussed, I know this is so long ago, Bill 64, is we discussed just dividing it by acreage. And I do agree with Chair Waters that it'll come back, the commission will have recommendations. But from what we've seen in the past with the commission, we should give our best shot over to them so that they're not having to decide too much, because it is a lot for them. They're volunteers. Not everyone attends their meetings, and then their best shot comes back over to us, right?
Got it.
So I think if anything, if we could finesse it and try to get it as close to what we all agree with, because I think we're all saying the same thing in so many words, I think that would be best. That way there's no guessing. The director is good with it. We basically have the planning commission just double okay it, and then it comes back and we're able to kind of pass it into law. It's something that I wished that we had done the first time around, but I get it. It's a little bit nuanced.
I have a question for the director or the DPP staff who's familiar in the process to the Planning Commission. Is it possible to pass both resolutions and then perhaps consolidate the recommendations based on, so it'd be one recommendation as opposed to two separate recommendations?
By the Planning Commission?
Yeah, to the Planning Commission. After we pass both.
I mean, that they could, but they do seem to conflict. So I guess when it comes back to council, you would have to decide between the two. They'd be looking at them separately.
Got it.
But I think what we're hoping to do, DPP, is to look at both of them and analyze and put forth, 3 options, whether it's one of the two or our own that would maybe consolidate or be a third option.
Because this is just in the technical, is it possible to call up Liz Krieger to further opine?
Good morning, Chair and committee members. I'm Elizabeth Krieger, Land Use Permits Division Chief with the Department of Planning and Permitting. The way we've done it in the past, when we have 2 bills or 2 resolutions with attached bills from the City Council that are related, we'll consolidate them in one report. We'll explain what the 2 bills propose, how we reconciled the differences, what we recommend, and then we transmit back both bills and a third bill that's the DPP bill that consolidates them. And usually the Planning Commission then has a relatively finite amount of information to process, because we will have explained why the 2 bills were different and what we did to reconcile those differences.
Members, are you more confused or are you more clarified? Councilmember Weyer, what is your mana'o?
Well, I'm getting text, so with your indulgence, I'm curious, since we've honed in on a specific issue, if I could ask the Ms. Achu her thoughts.
Sure.
Okay, mahalo. Ms. Achu, I think you're still there.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
And so the question was just, I know you've been listening to the discussion, so maybe to provide some additional input for us to consider. I'm definitely interested in knowing.
Yeah, thank you. So to Councilmember Tupola's point of the minors going in front of the boards or community associations, I actually agree. None of us want to see those all the time, but it does prompt a trigger. And in this draft, it also acknowledges that the board doesn't have to review it. And in the past for us, we have looked at the application and said, we don't really need to see it. And we've advised the applicant that, you know, there's really no need for you to come in front of us. So it just basically provided a trigger to allow us to have that oversight and say, oh, yeah, that doesn't really, we don't have any kuleana here. But at least provided a trigger and some accountability to that developer or landowner. And obviously the ones that do come in front of us that are hardy, we were able to provide, in many instances, information that kind of swayed or provided additional review for conditions of those, that process and that application. So I think to the point of it, the minors not coming in front of at all, I think it's important to provide the opportunity to that community to weigh in. And like I said, we don't want to see every application either, but it provides the trigger.
I appreciate that. And just
Sorry,
answer-
Councilmember Weyer, that actually, thank you for your mana'o. That wasn't actually what I was looking for. The discussion that we're having right now is whether we move both or not.
correct.
Okay, what is your position on that?
I think it's more straightforward to move both, but of course I'll defer. So I appreciate you entertaining the discussion, but I think it gives DPP the trigger to evaluate the proposals, and then I think they would flesh out details and have a third proposal,
Councilmember-
it sounds like.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Councilmember Tupola.
I think my problem is I hear everyone's concerns, but Resolution 25228, I have to go no on it because it literally says the council believes that all CUP minor applicants should be subject to the above mentioned neighborhood board or community association presentation. So it doesn't say this is a good suggestion. They can use their discretion on whether or not they're going to hear it. So I can't agree with that because I don't want anyone to think that I'm suggesting that we should subject all the minors to this. So that's why I'm saying I feel like you resolve the concerns in your CD with your resolution, and I'd rather us determine one to move forward, especially if one is going to do exactly what we think needs to be done with this particular project on the North Shore.
Chair?
Councilmember Weyer.
Yeah, no, this is a really good discussion. I just wanted to note, because it's come up a couple of times, like I agree that not all CUP minors should be going through a more lengthy process. I really appreciate Chair's engagement on it. I think what we're doing is adding agritourism specifically, so one type of CUP minor, to a list of CUP minors that already have to go through this process. And so it's really just a group of elevated issues, right? And so just wanted to note that, so there's no confusion that this isn't making all CUP minors go through the process.
Thank you. Councilmember Tupola, did you know it was narrowly tailored to agritourism? Are you okay with that, or you are still concerned about that? So it's not, I would be opposed to all CUPs as well.
Well, I'm just saying with the verbiage that I'm reading in the whereas clause, which doesn't have a CD, it's suggesting that. But I hear what everyone's saying. I'm just, my thought would be that this is not exactly the way that we want to go with Resolution 25228, whereas Resolution 2517 is accomplishing the same outcome. So if we're accomplishing the same outcome, then we should just go with the one that we think says it the best.
Okay, again, I think what I'm going to do is just because say if we do pass both out today, it doesn't mean that both is going to pass full council. So if you don't mind, I would like to move both measures forward, and noting it'd be opposition to 25228 from yourself, Councilmember.
Respectfully, yes.
Okay, so Councilmember Waters, before I make my recommendations, I'm going to make my recommendation for the Resolution 25-228.
No, nothing further. Thank you.
Okay. The chair, any questions before I make my recommendation? The chair recommends that Resolution 25-228 be amended to the posted CD1. Any discussions, any objections or reservations? Noting the reservations of Councilmember Tupola, the resolution has been amended to a CD1. The chair then recommends that resolution.
My reservations on the first measure.
Okay, yes. The chair then recommends a resolution.
Sorry. This is for 228?
Yes.
Same, likewise.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, but first it was the CD1, so I was making a recommendation on CD1. Are your reservations also on the CD1?
Correct.
Okay, I'm sorry. So noting the reservations for the CD1 to Resolution 25228 by Councilmember Waters, Councilmember Tupola, and Councilmember Okimoto. The resolution. Yes. So the amendment. Oh, yes. The resolution has been amended to a CD1. The chair then recommends that Resolution 25-228 CD1 be reported out for adoption. Any objections or reservations? I'm assuming it's the same reservations. Reservations from Councilmember Waters, Tupola, and Okimoto?
I'm a no, thank you, Chair.
Oh, noting the no reservation, I'm sorry, the no from Councilmember Tupola.
I'll do no also, Chair.
No from Councilmember Okimoto.
I'll do a no as well.
And a no from Council Waters. The measure has failed. The measure has failed. So I'm moving on to the next measure. Moving on to Resolution 26-17, the chair recommends that Resolution 26-17 be amended to the hand-carried CD1, OCS 2026-0085. Any discussion? Any objections or reservations? Hearing none, the resolution has been amended to a CD1. The chair then recommends that Resolution 26-17 CD1 be reported out for adoption. Any discussion? Any objections or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. The next agenda item, number 6, as I mentioned earlier, Resolution 26-6 has been canceled. The agenda item number 7, Bill 70, 2025, CD1 has been canceled. Moving on, we will be taking up agenda item numbers 8 and 9 together. Members of the public may testify in either or both agenda items. Items number 8, Bill 5, 2026, and item number 9, Bill 6, 2026. These bills amend the land use ordinance to modify the development standards for the apartment and apartment mixed-use zoning districts. Amendments to the land use ordinance proposed by the council are processed by the Department of Planning and Permitting and the Planning Commission. The council proposed Bill 5, 2026 by adoption of Resolution 25-105. When processing the proposal, the department recommended an alternative version of the council's Bill 5, which was introduced by request and numbered as Bill 6, 2026. The commission recommended the department's Bill 6. I will be recommending that we proceed on this matter under Bill 6, 2026. Members, we have posted on the agenda a CD1 version of Bill 6, 2026. For your information, a summary of the amendments is listed on the agenda. The CD1 incorporates amendments made in Ordinance 25-2, which repealed and replaced Article 5 of the Land Use Ordinance relating to use regulations. The CD1 also requires heights for duplex units to comply with residential height and height setback requirements. Bill 5, 2025, which is the council's version, would reduce the minimum lot area, reduce the minimum lot dimensions, and simplify and increase the minimum residential floor area ratio. I want to applaud Councilmember Dos Santos Tam for initiating this bill, which started the conversation on updating the development standards for the apartment and apartment mixed-use districts to facilitate development of more housing. Bill 6, 2025, which is the department's version, would reduce the minimum lot area and lot dimensions, but to a lesser extent than the council's Bill 5. The department's Bill 6 would also simplify and increase the maximum residential FAR, modify the FAR for commercial projects to incentivize mixed-use development, and simplify the maximum building area. The department reports that out of a total of 7,729 lots on Oahu that are zoned apartment or apartment mixed-use, 308 lots are considered developable, with a reasonable likelihood of subdivision and redevelopment in the relatively near future. These 308 zoning lots are mostly in the A2 medium density apartment district and mostly in the primary urban center and the EVA development plan area. The department reports that modifying the development standards for the apartment and apartment mixed-use zoning districts could double the number of developable lots that are subdivided in the future and contribute significantly to the development of housing in these zoning districts. Regarding minimum lot area, the Council's Bill 5 recommends a minimum lot size of 5,000 square feet for the A1, A2, AMX1, and AMX2 districts, but does not include a minimum lot size for the A3 and AMX X3 districts. The Department's Bill 6 recommends a 5,000 square foot minimum lot size of 5,000 for each of these zoning districts, which the Department considers to be the minimum size needed to develop the lots efficiently. Regarding minimum lot dimensions, the Council's Bill 5 recommends a minimum 45-foot width and depth in the A1 and AMX1 districts and a minimum 50-foot width and depth in the A2, A3, AMX2, and AMX3 districts. However, the Department believes this may not provide enough space to accommodate adequate infrastructure within the street footage. The Department's Bill 6 recommends standard 60-foot minimum dimensions for all apartment and apartment mixed-use districts. Regarding density or floor area ratio, which I will be referring to as FAR, the Council's Bill 5 increases the maximum residential FAR to 2.0 in the A1 and AMX1 districts, 3.0 in the A2 and AMX2 districts, and 4.0 in the A3 and AMX3 districts. The maximum commercial FAR remains at 0.3 in the AMX1 district, 0.4 in the AMX2 district, and 0.6 in the AMX3 district. The Department's Bill 6 would retain the maximum residential FAR and maximum commercial FAR that are in the Council's Bill 5, but it will apply the maximum commercial FAR as an additional allowance, not as part of the overall maximum FAR. This approach is intended to eliminate competition between residential and commercial uses in the apartment mixed-use districts. Regarding maximum building area, which is the maximum percentage of a zoning lot that can be covered by a structure over 30 inches in height, the Council's Bill 5 did not modify the current standards, which range from 60% to 40% of the zoning lot, depending on the lot size, with the higher percentage for the smaller lots and the lower percentage for the larger lots. The Department's Bill 6 would set a single and scalable standard of 60% of the zoning lot, which would scale linearly as the lot size increases. The Council's Bill 5 and the Department's Bill 6 do not adjust the required yards, height setbacks, and maximum building height, which provide adequate checks against inappropriate development that may be possible with the additional allowed density. Since the Planning Commission recommended Bill 6, 2026, a simple majority vote of the council members is required for Bill 6 to pass third reading. Joining us in the council chamber is Alex Beatty from the Department of Planning and Permitting, who will be providing a brief presentation on Bills 5 and 6, 2026. For your information, the presentation is available online as Departmental Communication 63, 2026.
Good morning, Chair and Council members. Thank you for that robust explanation. You actually gave quite a bit of my presentation, so I will try to make this as brief as possible. Again, here to talk about Bills 5 and 6, mostly Bill 6, which has a CD1, which amend the apartment and apartment mixed-use development standards. This table summarizes the two bills. I want to, again, mostly focus today on Bill 6. But both bills adjust the minimum lot dimension, minimum lot size, maximum FAR, and then Bill 6 also adjusts the commercial FAR in the building area. We'll come back to this table, so no need to read it all right now. Density as an abstract concept gets talked about in a lot of ways. Today we're talking about it from a building density perspective, so not units per acre, not people per acre, but how much building, how much floor area. Neither of these bills adjust height, setback, or yards, so we're really just focusing in on FAR, building area, lot dimension, and lot size, and only in the apartment and apartment mixed-use districts. I want to thank Hawaii Housing Lab. They provided some graphics for the presentation today. They have a very helpful handbook to talk and think about density. And I also wanted to thank Councilmember Dos Santos Tam. This is a very fun project for me to work on, and I also think moves everything in the right direction. So this is good work moving forward, and I'm excited to see how the discussion goes. I will skip this mostly, but the LUO is required, our zoning code is required by the charter, and it encourages development that's consistent with the plans. So our zoning code and these development standards should be consistent with the plans. The apartment and apartment mixed-use districts are meant to provide for a variety of living environments from common wall, lower density multifamily housing up to high rises. And then AMX is supposed to provide for allowances of commercial uses that meet the daily needs of neighborhood residents, grocery stores, salons, that type of thing. As Chair Kiaʻāina mentioned, the vast majority of these lots that are developable, which means excluding those with high building to land value ratios, and then those that are too small to be subdivided or too narrow or are roadway lots, the vast majority of those 308 are in the PUC EVA development area in central Oahu. It's a lot along the rail route. This shows all of the apartment and apartment mixed-use districts, so we did not pull out just the 308, but you can see where it's clustered and where it's mostly focused. And so even in, say, Waialua or Kaneohe, most of those apartment districts are developed to a point where they're unlikely to be affected by this. Summarizing the proposal again, I'll be talking about each of these sections individually. Minimum lot size is meant to provide for the minimum area that a reasonable development could take place on the lot. Larger lots, there's an efficiency of scale. Smaller lots allow for more market participation. So we're looking for something that can kind of split the difference there. If they're too small, they're going to be really difficult to develop with any reasonable density. So for that reason, we don't support Bill 5, which has a 0 minimum lot size for the A3 and AMX3 districts. Minimum lot dimension, and this is a little technical, but I have a handy graphic that a staff member prepared. This is the area where almost always the minimum lot dimension is the frontage. It's where the lot meets the right-of-way, where private land interacts with the public land, and a lot has to happen there. If they're too narrow, it would be difficult for lots to be developed in a way that's envisioned by the plans. This is some call-outs from the various plans. They expect that developments be well-designed, use green streets, be pedestrian-oriented, have enhanced walking environments. These are the kinds of things that we imagine the apartment and apartment mixed-use district would be developed with. But at a 50 or even 45-foot frontage, what would likely happen is a lot of driveway, a lot of pedestrian conflict. So this is just a simplification of what a frontage might look like. And you can see that 40 feet of the frontage is the driveway for a two-way driveway. And that doesn't account for a sewer, water, electrical, street trees, fire hydrants, stormwater catchment, all of those public utilities, and then all those private utilities that have to cross that frontage happen in this area. And it's really important that it not be too small, because you would end up with underdeveloped lots. And the different agencies are still asking for quite a bit. HECO requires 12 feet for a transformer that is sized for an apartment building. BWS requires 8 feet from trees. Fire hydrants, street parking, again, it's just a lot that happens here, and that's what I wanted to highlight. And if there's not enough space given, then the smaller sized utilities would be provided, limiting the development to low density housing. It would be a waste of the zoning that we're granting. Building area is only a Bill 6 recommendation. So Bill 6 proposes to simplify the standard. Right now there's an inverse of the lot size, so more building area is allowed. Building area, we have found to have a granular requirement like that isn't really all that effective. So this simplifies and relaxes the standard to the highest amount allowed right now. And it, oh boy, hold on. And in practice, on the left, that development has a lot less building area than the one on the right. And you can see in the image that I pulled from the bottom right corner that from the public perspective, they're about the same. So building area often affects how the private space feels, but that doesn't really affect how the public space feels. So we're hoping that this might allow for more efficient development and support things like car garages instead of, which is building area, instead of open parking lots, which is not building area. FAR, as Chair indicated, like we're all recommending that the FAR be increased to 2, 3, and 4 for A1, 2, and 3. And then Bill 6 also recommends that these densities for commercial uses be separated out to provide sort of a policy incentive to utilize these mixed-use districts, which are more efficient uses of land, allow for alternative access to daily needs like walking, biking, or taking bus, and hopefully communities that are less reliant on single occupancy vehicles. And all of those things are supported by the city's goals and objectives as adopted by the council through the plans. I have some demonstration slides to show you. This would be like A1 and AMX1 and A2. AMX1 and A2. And then A3 and AMX3. Again, just pointing out that Bill 6 separates out the commercial allowance so that there's less competition between residential and commercial uses. We support this provision. And then the result would be more potential for subdivided lots and more potential for units. Obviously, these numbers are quite large, but you can't expect them all to be developed, but it does move the conversation towards a housing cap sort of thing, like what is our housing cap that the zoning could allow? And this would increase that by about 55,000 units. Same with Bill 64, allowing the B1 and B2 to have multifamily dwellings. That change similarly increased our housing cap by about 50 or 55,000 units. So this is all moving us in the direction of allowing more housing. And that's it for the presentation. I'm more than happy to take questions and go back to any slides if you would like.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions for Mr. Beatty? Councilmember Dos Santos Tam, do you have any questions for him?
No, I'll save it for discussion.
Okay. Councilmember Waters.
Thank you, Swedge. Thank you for your hard work. And thank you, Councilmember Dos Santos Tam. I actually had a question relating to downtown, if you don't mind, Councilmember Dos Santos Tam. You know, I talked with a developer recently, and with regard to downtown, why do we have FAR requirements on downtown when we're not talking about residential? Can we, with your indulgence, actually look at possibly lifting the FAR requirement downtown? And is it true that it's either 2, 3, or 4 downtown?
Downtown is zoned BMX 4, and the FAR is a scale, and I think it goes up to 7 or 7.5, I think, based on how much public open space you provide. So the densities downtown are slightly less than what we're allowing through the TOD interim plan development permits that come through this body. But I think that's something we would be open to looking at. There's an immediate follow-up question that happens if this bill gets adopted, which is, well, why is then B1 and B2 and BMX3 now lower than our apartment district bills? And that's something we're excited to work on as well, but simply don't have the time at the moment.
Okay, any other questions for the presenter? If not, we're going to bring up the director, Don Takuchi-Apuna, for the Director of Planning and Permitting.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, we are in support of Bill 6, as Alex alluded to, but we're here for any questions. Thank you.
Members, are there any questions? If not, I'm going to take public testimony, proceeding first with in-person testimony. Do we have any in-person testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Anybody standing by who'd like to testify? Seeing none, proceeding with remote testifiers. Any remote testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Members, we are in discussion on either Bill 5 or 6 before I make my recommendations. Councilmember Dos Santos Tam.
No, thank you, Chair. You know, this is something, as Alex mentioned, that we've probably needed to do for a long time. There was a slide in there about the history of how our zoning code got to where it is. And if you look at many of the problems that we've been struggling with, monster homes, the reason why monster homes exist in our residential areas is the apartment zones are so restrictive that people try to shoehorn 20-bedroom monster homes into residential. The whole reason why we have Bill 7 in the first place is because in order to build apartments of any size, you need FARs above what's allowed, which is very restrictive. And frankly, if we had done this 7 or 8 years ago. We may not have even needed Bill 7 in the first place, minus the incentives that help to get projects to pencil out. And then finally, as Alex mentioned, as we work through the TOD plans and other things like that, we can also address business development areas, all of which also needs to be updated. So I want to thank you for hearing this bill, and of course the Planning Commission for their work, and the folks over at DPP who have worked on this.
Thank you so much. If there is no further discussion, the chair recommends that action on Bill 5, 2026 be postponed to a date and time to be determined by the committee chair. Any discussion, any objections or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. The chair recommends that Bill 6, 2026 be amended to the posted CD1. Any discussion, any objections or reservations? Hearing none, the bill has been amended to a CD1. The chair then recommends that Bill 6, 2026 CD1 be reported out for passage on second reading and scheduling of a public hearing. Any discussion, any objections or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Moving to agenda item number 10 for action, Bill 7, 2026. This bill amends the land use ordinance by modifying the sign standards for the apartment and apartment mixed-use districts. Amendments to the land use ordinance proposed by the council are processed by the Department of Planning and Permitting and the Planning Commission. The council proposed Bill 7 by adoption of Resolution 24-223. The department supports the intent of the bill, but notes that the bill inadvertently omits the second paragraph of RO8 Section 21-740D. The Commission's recommended approval of the bill, but recommended an amendment to reduce the size limit on the sign from 12 square feet to 9 square feet. The proposed amendment to RO8 Section 21-740D would allow for one sign for each ground floor establishment with building frontage. Currently, only one sign is allowed for each principal pedestrian or vehicular entrance to the building. If there are several ground floor establishments that have street frontage, the proposed amendment would allow all ground floor establishments with street frontage to have a sign. The department reported that existing mixed-use buildings are most likely to use additional signage for ground floor establishments. Existing multi-unit dwellings are the least likely to use additional signage because they do not have ground floor establishments, but could convert the ground floor in the future. Undeveloped land could be developed and mixed-use buildings that could take advantage of the modified sign standards. The department concluded that allowing additional signage for ground floor establishments would have minimal adverse visual or health and safety impacts on surrounding areas because signs are already restricted in size and direct illumination is prohibited. Also, since establishments on higher floors are not allowed additional signage, visual impacts will only occur at the ground level. Members, we have posted on the agenda a CD1 version of the resolution that was submitted by Councilmember Tupola, who also introduced Resolution 24-223. For your information, a summary of the amendments is listed on the agenda. I will now defer to Councilmember Tupola for an explanation.
Thank you so much, Chair. The proposed CD1 to Bill 7 does resolve the concerns brought up by the department, decreasing the maximum size of the sign on the ground floor, as well as inserting the missing paragraph. This is not a common in other areas because these mixed-use zoning districts kind of popped up in Kapolei as the second city. Not only do I have Mehana, but now I have Ho'opili that has multiple commercial businesses on the ground floor. So seeing as though this is a new type of development that the city is exploring, many of the businesses have been adversely affected by this particular rule in the land use ordinance. So with this small amendment, I think that we'd be helping a lot of people, and we're trying to build neighborhoods where you can work and play, and no one really knows where any of these places are without the signage. So I've been working with the department as well as the Planning Commission, and thank everyone for their input.
Thank you so much for that explanation. Since the CD1 incorporates the Planning Commission's recommendation to reduce the size limit on the sign from 12 square feet to 9, a simple majority vote of the council members is required for the bill to pass third reading. Joining us in the council chamber is Lena Poimsuan from the Department of Planning and Permitting, who will be providing a brief presentation on Bill 7, 2026. For your information, the presentation is available online as Departmental Communication 64, 2026. Welcome.
Good morning, council members. Again, my name is Lena Pomswan, DPP staff planner. I believe Chair did a great job summarizing what I was going to present on, so I can go through it quickly, just since we're here. Yeah. So the amendment change is mainly the square footage and allowing ground floor establishments to have signage based on building frontage. So essentially, they would be allowed signage in for their entrance facing the street, and as well as facing a parking lot, parkway, accessible open space if there's an entrance on that side. So an example, as Councilmember Tupola mentioned, is Mehana Kapolei. So this bill would allow them to have the orange sign where it would say Mehana Kapolei, for example, and then the yellow signs in the slide for the specific ground floor establishments such as Salon Dano, O Salon, and Liang Dental Kapolei. And then let's say they have an entrance facing the parking lot, they would get that second additional sign as well. So why 9 square feet? We chose it based on the public hearing signage allowance in the code right now. It's a reduction to what was proposed originally, which was something the Planning Commission was not comfortable with. And we think it's large enough to be seen by all vehicles or other modes of transportation, as well as small enough to adhere to pedestrian scale. So how big is a 9 square foot sign? Sign area is calculated based on the width and the height of the sign. So generally it's a 1.5 by 6 foot, a 1 by 9, or a 3 by 3 is most common. And then we also have examples of what the 9 square foot signage would look like. So here's the Aina Shopping Center, where they have already 9 square foot signs. And then here's an example of what it would look like in Mehana at Kapolei. So signage right now is about 3.25 square foot, and 9 square foot is shown in the yellow. And then as you can see, based on the design of the building and how the units are separated by the beams, they would probably be further restricted for the sign allowance. And then we also did an analysis on the AMX districts across the island. We found that generally there are 8 areas with AMX districts. They tend to be adjacent or in close proximity to business and business use districts, which would make it pretty normalized in terms of additional signage in the area. And then we also found that most likely it will be the existing multi-unit work-live building developments that would be using this, and any future multi-use buildings. So to conclude, we agree and support the draft CD1. We believe that there's going to be very minimal visual impact based on a regulation level, a design level, and a zoning level. And then that concludes my presentations. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you so much for that presentation. Members, are there any questions for the presenter? No questions, Councilmember Tupola? Okay. Good job for both of the presenters today. Oh, Councilmember Dos Santos Stan.
I have a question for DPP overall. You know, I appreciate this, and I think this is absolutely a step in the right direction for our apartment mixed-use areas. I wanted to ask about sign permits, the sign permit process in general. I sent a letter to DPP a few weeks ago about sign permits. I've heard from many applicants that a simple sign permit, sometimes the value of the sign is just a few $1,000s, takes a very long time. I was wondering if you could comment about the processing times for sign permits, the volumes of sign permit applications that come in, perhaps as a reflection of the total amounts of permits that you process, and some of the difficulties of getting them out in a timely way.
Thank you, Council Member. I don't have those numbers, but I could get it for you. Certainly, we do get, I wouldn't say a super high volume, but we do get them regularly as applications. I think there was some backlogging in the last year, so we are working on all of that. It is a part of a submission into H&O Build like all other applications, but we'll get that information to you. Thank you.
Thank you. And I bring this up because the process of applying is fairly cumbersome. I understand we want to have a robust sign scheme so we don't have billboards and other things, but when you submit an application, you need architectural drawings of the signs, you need signs, you need drawings of all the other signs in the building, which DPP should have. I don't know why the applicant has to do it themselves. You need architectural renderings of the entire facade. It's very cumbersome for a small business to do. And that's actually something that I'd like to work on over the next few months to see if we can even use AI. And they submit a picture of the building and it recognizes where all the signs are. There's got to be a way we can make this as easy as possible for small businesses.
Yep, we agree. We want to make it simple for them as well. Thank you.
Councilmember Cordero.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question relating to the presentation and the proposed district sign standards relating to marquee fascia versus one that's not directly illuminated, because are marquee fascias normally illuminated or not necessarily?
It depends on the district for a marquee fascia, but usually marquee fascia is like a slanted roof overhang where you would have the sign there.
Okay, I understand. Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, if there are no other questions for DPP, I will now take public testimony. Proceeding first with in-person testimony in the chamber. Clerks, do we have any in-person testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Anyone else standing by to testify? Seeing none. Proceeding with remote testimony. Are there any remote testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Members, do you have any other questions or discussion before I make my recommendations? Seeing none, the chair recommends that Bill 7, 2026 be amended to the posted CD1. Any discussion, any objections or reservations? Hearing none, the bill has been amended to a CD1. The chair then recommends that Bill 7, 2026 CD1 be reported out for passage on second reading and scheduling of a public hearing. Any discussion, any objections or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Moving on to agenda item number 11 and our last measure for the day. Bill 15 for action, Bill 15, 2026. This bill amends the affordable housing requirements under ROH Chapter 29, which applies to the new construction of 10 or more for-sale dwelling units or to the conversion of hotels, offices, or rental units into multi-family dwellings containing 10 or more for-sale dwelling units subject to certain exclusions. Under ROH Chapter 29, the number of affordable housing units required is determined as a percentage of the total number of dwelling units in the principal project, and the percentages are higher for interim plan development transit projects, plan development transit projects, or transit-oriented development special district projects seeking bonus height or density. I will be referring to these types of projects as TOD projects. A developer may provide these required affordable units as for sale or rental units. For sale affordable units may be provided under 3 options based on the length of time the units must remain affordable. For TOD projects, 10% of the total units must remain affordable for a minimum of 30 years. 20% of the total units must remain affordable for a minimum of 10 years, or 30% of the total units must remain affordable for a minimum of 5 years. For all other projects, 5% of the total units must remain affordable for a minimum of 30 years. 10% of the total units must remain affordable for a minimum of 10 years, or 15% of the total units must remain affordable for a minimum of 5 years. Two TOD projects elected to provide for-sale affordable units under the option requiring that 10% of the total units remain affordable for a minimum of 30 years. While 10% of the total unit constitutes the lowest percentage of the total units that must be provided as affordable for TOD projects, the 30-year affordability period proved to be problematic, and developers were not able to sell the smaller affordable units. particularly for studio units. The 30-year affordability period was not appealing to potential home buyers who plan to start families or for other reasons who would need a larger home for the 30-year period expires before. The Council has already provided relief to one of these projects, Sky Ala Moana, via Resolution 25-288, which allowed the developer to rent the unsold units to households earning 80% or below of the AMI until the units are sold. If the developer had selected the rental option, it would have required the developer to provide 15% of the total units as affordable rental units. So the developer is basically providing 5% fewer affordable units. The representative of one of the developers who testified in opposition to this bill is the original applicant for the Sky Ala Moana project and was responsible for electing the 30-year affordability option. The Council recently provided relief to that project, and while that developer is no longer involved in the development of the project, it is still involved in a marketing role and should know from direct experience the difficulties encountered in selling affordable units under the 30-year affordability option. Under ROH Chapter 29, 4 marketing periods are specified, with each of the first 3 marketing periods consisting of a 120-day period. As the marketing periods progress, unsold affordable rental or for sale units could be incrementally offered to household income groups that are 20% higher than the household income group for the previous marketing period, not to exceed households earning 100% of the AMI, but at prices affordable to households earning the percentage of AMI originally required. For affordable rental units, there does not appear to be a need for the marketing periods because the units are quickly rented. For sale affordable units that developers have difficulty selling, particularly those that have a 30-year affordability period, the marketing periods have not been successful in selling units that are not attractive to buyers, and the units may remain vacant for months until the marketing period expires. Bill 15, therefore, would delete the 30-year affordability option because it has not been successful and resulted in fewer affordable units being provided. The bill also deletes the marketing periods that have been associated with the 30-year affordability period. Keep in mind that all other options for providing required affordable units under ROH Chapter 29 remain in place and are available to developers. Chair Waters, as the introducer of this bill, would you like to comment further?
Yes, thank you so much. And by the way, that was a very good explanation of what the current status is and what this bill does. You know, I think it's really important to have this conversation regarding affordable housing because it is the #1 topic along with cost of living issues. You know, since first reading, I've met with home builders and developers to try to get opinion on whether or not we should go forward with this. You know, it is a tool in the tool chest for a developer to use. My feeling was that, and it's not just with the 30-year requirement, but even just having a single requirement to remain affordable is something that we might want to discuss further. From the outset, I want to suggest that we defer the measure, but I do want to have the conversation because the 2 instances where developers opted to build 10% of the units for 30 years, it didn't work. They can't sell it. And if you think about it, if you're a single person and you live in a studio, it's possible you could do that for 30 years. But if you have a partner, now you have 2 people in the same unit for 30 years. And if you have a child, 3 or 4 people in a studio for 30 years, it actually turns out to be more like a jail cell than someplace you want to raise a family. That's why I brought this up. You know, again, and I do want to ask at the appropriate time of DPP, what's the logic behind having the requirement that you remain affordable for a number of years, #1? And #2, is anybody even utilizing this program? Right? Is it even working? But thank you so much. I really appreciate your explanation.
Thank you, Chair Waters. I'm actually going to go to public testimony, then I'll bring DPP up. Proceeding first with in-person testimony in the chamber. Clerks, do we have any in-person testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Would anyone else like to testify? if you could state your name. You have to turn the mic on.
Aloha. My name is McKinley Eads, and I'm testifying on behalf of the Avalon Group. We strongly support the city's goal of improving affordable housing outcomes. The city and taxpayers have invested billions in rail to support density and housing around stations. However, we hold concerns that Bill 15, as currently written, removes critical flexibility without replacing it with a practical mechanism to address real-world market conditions. Bill 15's repealing of the 30-year for sale affordability option and eliminating the structured marketing period framework. I understand the motivation behind these changes. In practice, the marketing periods did not always function as intended, and the 30-year restriction reduced buyer interest, especially for the small units produced in certain IPDT and TOD projects. However, removing these tools does not address the underlying challenge. In some cases, despite good faith and documented marketing efforts, affordable restricted for-sale units simply do not sell. When this happens, the result is vacant housing. Vacant affordable units do not serve families, do not strengthen communities, and do not move the city closer to its housing goals. We have seen this occur in real projects such as Sky Ala Moana and the Park on Keeaumoku. Importantly, these projects are not failures. They represent substantial private investment, the delivery of hundreds of homes, the provision of public benefits, and an expansion of the city's tax base. Yet even with legitimate marketing efforts, some affordable for-sale units remain unsold. This reality highlights a broader point. We need more private investment in housing, including affordable housing, not less. Removing flexibility from Bill 15 could unintentionally discourage private developers from participating, making it harder to deliver the homes our community needs. This is why Bill 15 needs a clearly defined release valve mechanism to ensure affordable units are actually occupied and serving families. I respectfully propose the following amendment. If a developer can demonstrate documented good faith marketing efforts, such as a print and digital advertising.
You're going to have to, you had 1 minute.
Oh,
you already went over that, so if you could summarize it. We have your testimony, so if you can summarize it, I would appreciate it.
Yes. If units remain unsold after their required marketing periods, then those units should be allowed to convert to affordable renting housing. To ensure a meaningful and proportional public benefit, any conversion from for sale to rental should carry a longer affordability commitment, specifically a 30-year for sale requirement to convert to 60-year rental restriction. This approach delivers clear benefits. It prevents affordable units from sitting vacant, accelerates occupancy, increases long-term affordability for the public, and preserves the financial feasibility needed to bring projects to completion. Without a safety valve mechanism, the changes proposed in Bill 15 could increase lender uncertainty, complicate project financing, and reduce participation in TOD and IPD pathways, outcomes that may ultimately limit housing production. A release valve does not weaken the city's affordable housing goals, it strengthens them by ensuring that affordable units are occupied and functioning as intended. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other individuals in the audience who would like to testify? Did anyone want to query the testifier? Have questions for the testifier? Could you please come up?
Thank you so much. Appreciate your testimony. And thank you for your willingness to work with us to try to find solutions. Do you think, I mean, we already helped, I think, the Sky with allowing it to go into rental. Do you think it would help sell the units if we reduce the 30-year requirement, say, in half to 15 years or even 10 years?
Just speaking for myself personally, I'm 22 years old. I wouldn't really see myself wanting to live in the same place I do now when I'm 52. But yeah, I think that would definitely help.
So you agree with me, though, that like you said, you wouldn't want to live in a studio for 30 years.
But I do think at the end of the day, if it's the only option to make a project pencil, even if you and I would not want to live in there, there is proof that some people do.
But again, well, some people actually bought the units, right? But you couldn't sell all of them. But I'm just thinking, rather than converting it to rental, should we be considering, at least in this case and the other developer who opted for this option, we just reduce the amount of years that it needs to stay affordable to allow you to sell them?
I believe so.
But also, why would the developer only build studios at the 30-year requirement? Because I think if it was a larger unit, you'd probably be able to sell them easier.
I agree with that, but I do not know why they chose studios.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember DeSantis Tam.
Thank you, Chair. I know that you're involved with a number of projects and probably familiar with the rental market. Right now, in the Ala Moana corridor, Kaka'ako downtown area, what's the market rent convert to in terms of AMI? Is it 80% or is it a little more than that? Is it?
I would say it's a bit more than 80%,
Is
probably
it-
around 100, 120.
So it's about 100 to 120%. So theoretically, if somebody were to use the marketing period and allow it to scale up, you might actually hit market rent anyway. Is that kind of what might happen?
I would not foresee. I think that if you still restricted it to those specific AMI levels, that you could ensure affordability for, we call them like affordability years, we could keep it the same.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. If there's no one else in the chamber to testify, clerks, do we have any remote testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
For the administration, do we have DHLM leadership here? Or
Good morning. Gavin Thornton here on behalf of Director Kevin O'Shea. I'm the Housing Policy Director. We actually don't have a position on this particular bill, but do agree with some of the sentiments expressed by Council Chair Waters. We think it would be helpful we think Chapter 29 is ripe for review and further analysis, and would love the opportunity to work with Council to do that.
thank you. Does the DPP director have any mana'o as well?
Yes, I think we do agree that the marketing and affordability periods are not working, so we appreciate the intent of this bill, and we'll work with DHLM and the council to figure out what the correct solution is. Thanks.
I appreciate it. And just for the record, I've already been contacted by the other developer to explore the options. And so we have had a conference call with appropriate counsel to tell them what had occurred with Sky Ala Moana. And so if the writing is on the wall, I think Vice Chair Waters' attempt was to address that issue head on so that we don't get into this game of having to come back to the council and to modify the structure. Okay, members, we are in discussion, and can I seek your counsel? What are you recommending then?
Oh, thank you, Chair. And again, thank you for having a hearing on this very important housing measure, but I do suggest that we defer it. I really appreciate the Department of Housing and Land Management as well as DPP opining that really it's not working. Right? Even the 30% affordable units that must remain affordable for 5 years, I don't know how many developers are choosing that option or any of the three options on the table. But with your indulgence, could I ask Liz Krieger to come up and opine on what the rationale was when our predecessors made this option?
Thank you, Chair. Elizabeth Krieger, DPP. So you're wondering what the concept of having the 30-year affordability period was? Okay. I think that the idea of a 30-year affordability period was not to keep people in the same unit for 30 years. I think it was to make sure that when it changes hands during that 30-year period, it remains an affordable unit. So I think that there's a certain profit sharing. I think that owners of affordable units get something like 1% per year, or I can't quite remember how it is. But if the market is going up by much higher percentages, they're not capturing the value of that increased real estate value. So many cities very carefully manage their affordable housing stock as an asset. They have a manager who is managing a list of qualified applicants. They then, when somebody who is in an affordable unit says, I want to sell this affordable unit, they facilitate and assist that sale, and let the seller and the buyer know what their circumstance is. Many of these cities are looking not for a 30-year period, but for essentially a forever asset in that city of an affordable housing stock, so that you don't have things expiring out of the affordable housing every 10 years. You have a percentage of units in the community that will remain reserved for people at certain area median incomes. So I think that when they conceptually looked at it originally, they had envisioned a much more managed situation, as opposed to kind of the way we do it with it, which is with affordable housing agreements that apply to each individual development. And that, of course, from a management strategy is pretty cumbersome, both on the part of the managers of those units as well as on the part of Department of Community Services, Planning and Permitting, DHLM, and sometimes HHFDC. So a lot of different agencies are involved in all of these.
But I'm wondering, if we get rid of the time requirement, these units are going to sell. And perhaps if we make it a requirement that it has to be owner occupied rather than a time requirement, because as you know, many people will buy a studio, sell it, make a small profit, and move on to a bigger unit when their family situation changes. So just want to look at different options. We could keep this on the books and see ultimately if the developer comes back again, we're going to question them like, you sure you want to do 10% affordable for 30 years? Because, you know, we know for the 2 instances where it was selected, it didn't work. And last question, Chair. You know, you have 3 options. How often do you see developers choosing any one of these 3?
Well, my division doesn't manage the doesn't administer Chapter 29, but I would say in general, we actually see a lot more people just going straight for a 201H or a Bill 7 Chapter 32 style project. So I think people are responding a lot to government subsidies. So if you're looking at 5, 10, 15, 20% affordable mandate versus 50%, and then you get, you know, you can apply for waivers and funding, people are moving in that direction. That's my perception, but again, I don't administer Chapter 29, so take that with a grain of salt.
No, I appreciate it. That's my perception as well. But thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. If there's no other further discussion, the Chair, Councilmember Weyer.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to note a lot of my concerns are allayed from the discussion today, so that makes me really hopeful. I think my initial concern and continued objection to the bill going forward was really the discussion that was laid out in terms of having a tool in the toolkit, you know, understanding, are we looking at increasing inventory? You know, I know so many of us, so many of my friends really look forward to the opportunity to own their own home. And we know that this entire program, right outside of just this small allocation, has had 7 projects, maybe 9 applications in total. And so it is underutilized. And of course, as you go down that scale, we understand that it's all about penciling out. I think no one wants to provide, you know, a high profit margin for anyone with taxpayer money in terms of developers, for example. But the reality is like, you know, my own eyes show me is that we're not increasing and creating the number of units we need at the pace that we need it, right? You know, the UHERO report came up this week. We know folks are pressed beyond measure on both the cost of living and just the lack of economic opportunity. And so really my concern was just ensuring that we weren't taking away tools, but looking at opportunities to provide more tools. Because I know that when we look at government's role in this entire process, it's really where we can step in, where nonprofit, private, community aren't able to provide the resources or the opportunities. And so my main hope through all of this is that I appreciate the conversation that it's created. And really my main passion and goal through the discussion, all the measures to date, has really just been about emphasizing that we really need to look at every opportunity to provide a pathway to create the housing that our community needs. So appreciate the discussion.
Councilmember Dos Santos Town.
Thank you, Chair. I just have one more question for DPP because Liz said something that triggered a thought. Does DPP have a concern that if we were to drastically amend our IPDT process, that it would push developers to utilize the 201H process instead, where we have very little say over what the parameters are?
Thank you for that question. I think, my personal thought on that is that the incentives within the TOD area are such that developers and landowners have an incentive to go for the TOD bonuses. And I don't think that they would necessarily choose a 201H process over that. I think that's true for the Ala Moana area. Elsewhere on the alignment, I would imagine that debate, if on the part of the developer, would be a lot closer. That the benefits from a 201H versus the benefits from an IPDT or a planned development transit permit could be a lot closer.
And then just to clarify, all of the IPDT permits that have been issued so far have been in the Ala Moana area. Have there been others outside of the Ala Moana area?
There was one in Chinatown, and then there were projects that I don't think ever came to fruition that never even actually applied in Waipahu.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Cordero.
Oh, actually, first off, I'll support the introducer's recommendation, but I did have a clarifying question about the bill. If we pass this bill, will it alleviate and release all of the existing projects or just future projects?
But we're going to be deferring the bill.
Yeah, I understand. That's why I wasn't going to do it.
Okay, so having concluded discussion, the chair recommends that action on Bill 15, 2026 be postponed to a date and time to be determined by the committee chair. Any discussion, any objections or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Mahalo, everyone, for being here today. There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned.